Yo, what's going on, guys? You weren't meant to see that here. Back out with another banger video. In today's video, we're going to be talking about pop music, and in particular, pop music in 2024. If you're watching this video in 2025, shout out to you. If you're watching this video in 2026, shout out to you. If you're watching this video in 2027, however, things are going to get really difficult for you, and I'm going to be the cause. Um, so yeah, I was just ranting to myself. If you want like a behind the scenes of what it's like to be a music reviewer, just like imagine ranting about music 24/7 and then in retrospect being like, oh, I should have recorded that. That would have been a great video and it would have got 20 views. And you're just kind of like that until you get a million subscribers, and then you're like, oh, that could have got 150,000 views. Um, but yeah, I was just ranting about pop music because on my album of the year, I haven't thought of a name yet. Please do consider following me for written reviews. Always stay plugging. I was just reviewing the Brat remixes because, well, obviously, Talk Talk with Troye Sivan just came out, and also the Brat Deluxe remix album, whatever you want to call it, because I guess Brat and it's the same, but it's not because there's three more songs or whatever. Um, I guess that was the deluxe, so the remix album has been announced, and I'm so hyped. And although it is a weird decision to put out in October, don't you think? Considering like Brat Summer and all that, like I'd assumed they'd put it out in like August at the latest, but we'll see. And I was just sort of thinking, this year's been really weird for pop music. Let's break down why. Obviously, the elephant in the room for pop music this year is the fact that everyone has dropped. Like, everyone. I mean, there were a few pop releases last year, and those artists haven't dropped again this year. Like Lana, Tate McRae, um, Olivia Rodrigo, they all dropped last year, so obviously they're probably not dropping this year, although Lana's kind of hinting at it, and I hope she does. But yeah, we'll see with that. I was thinking though, you've got Ariana, Taylor, Sabrina, Charlie, Billy, Dua Lipa, all these big artists dropping pop albums. Beyonce, you know, like it's been a very big year on the surface. Although has it been a great year? Because on one hand you have Brat, which Brat's obviously the big elephant in the room. Like Brat's one of the best pop albums of all time, and I'm down to say that. I gave it a 9 in my video. I'm pretty sure it's sat at a 98 on my album of the year right now. Um, and could go up past that. I mean, I'm not sure if it will, because giving out two tens in the same year would be kind of crazy. And then I'd get like Pitchfork allegations. I'm not Pitchfork. These are actually my opinions, believe it or not. No one's paying me to say this shit. If people were paying me to say this shit, I wouldn't wear the same hoodie in every video. What's going on with my tires? But yeah, Brat, I think, is just an astonishing record. Genuinely, like, mind-blowing stuff. Every single song is fantastic. I mean, I will continue to sing the praises of this album on Album of the Year on YouTube to my parents. My parents are probably sick of hearing me yap about this fucking album, but like, it's special. It's rare you get a pop album this good. And it's also really great to see Charlie finally get her recognition, because Charlie's been around the block for years now. True Romance came out over 10 years ago. How the Vroom Vroom EP will be 9 in a few months. Well, 9 next year. But still, it'll be like 9 years since the year that Vroom Vroom dropped next year, which is fucking crazy. But yeah, it's really great to see her finally get her flowers. I mean, obviously she's had hits in the past. You've got that I don't care, I love it. You've got that song, and you've got Boom Clap and shit. But like, those songs are like ancient. And obviously throughout her like pop 2 Number One Angel, Vroom Vroom era. She was kind of a bit too experimental for the mainstream. But I'm glad she blew up with Brat and not Crash, because Brat is actually still a pretty experimental record. I mean, maybe not the songs blowing up from it. You know, you've got songs like Apple or 360 that are blowing up, and they're just catchy and fun. You know, 360. When you're in the mirror, do you like what you see? Oh yeah, I sing Brat to my cousin. By the way, she's sick of it too. Um, but like, I just love this record. I mean, the whole like political framing of it now is kind of weird, because it's like Brat was our thing, and now like Kamala Harris is kind of involved, and like Kamala Harris isn't as bad as like the Republicans, but like still there's like a few red flags there. We're not getting into that. This isn't my political video. We're just going to talk about Brat and celebrate Brat for being an amazing pop record, which it is. Every single song bangs. Every single song has experimental moments. Lyrically, it's fantastic record. You know, like you've obviously got the tracks like a 360 or like a Von Dutch, where she's sort of feeling herself. But then you've also got songs like I Might Say Something Stupid, which is about like deliberately acting blasé to hide the fact that you're anxious, or like I Think About It All the Time, which is about like the resentment she kind of has towards herself for not having a kid. You know, she's kind of like worried that she's missed her chance and shit because she's like 30 or whatever now. Um, or a song like Sympathy is a Knife, where she's kind of talking about pushing people away and not getting on with people, or Girl So Confusing, which really sort of highlights the experiences of women in the industry. And I think the remix also adds to that narrative really well. This video isn't going to be Brat Review 2, however, because we've got more records to talk about. So we're going to do a bit of a speed round for these next few, because I don't have as nuanced opinions for them as I do on Brat. Ariana Grande, Eternal Sunshine, we'll start with that, because there's a very prominent YouTuber that you might have heard about. I'm not going to name him by name, because I don't want you guys going over and hating him, but the ones of you who do know will know. There's this YouTuber out there, and I actually agree with a lot of his takes on pop music, but his take on this album is not one I agree with. This is a record that I kind of have bad feelings towards, because I reacted to it and it was my first ever reaction to be taken down. But no, like that's when I went on break from the channel and shit. It was crazy. This record just so boring. Like, and this is coming from someone who doesn't hate Ariana. You know, I know there's a big like hate train towards her right now. I actually think Yes and was a pretty solid lead single. Um, it's just that everything else on this record sounds the same. And it also sounds the same as her last album. You know? Like, Positions, every song sounded the same. You know, you've got Ariana singing in this pitch that's the same throughout the whole album. You've got the instrumentals that are the same throughout the whole album with this weird trap sound, but it's also EQ'd to the point where there's no punch. And speaking of EQ, Ariana's vocals are so processed that you can't even recognize it's her. You know, it's a very mid record. And I think that's the issue with pop music this year, is there's been a lot of great pop music, and there's been a lot of pop music in general. Just a lot of it's mid. Like, there's only really one pop record in like the massive mainstream that I can think of off the top of my head that I hate, and y'all will know what that one is. We're not getting back into that because I don't want more mobbing comments. Like, no thanks. Although go watch a pretty recent and pretty successful reaction of mine if you want to find out what that album is. But this video isn't a hateration video. This is me just talking. Let's get back to a positive album, because I think that's the way I'll do it throughout this video. Is I'll do a positive album, then a negative one, then a positive one. You know, just try and keep the mood up a bit. Billie Eilish's Hit Me Hard and Soft. This record actually took a bit to grow on me. On first listen, I really liked it. I thought it was a really pretty record. But then outside of lunch, I just wasn't returning to it. And then I got this weird whim to listen to it in the shower one night and like broke because it's amazing. I think it's probably Billy's safest album so far. You know, it doesn't have the same experimental crossover that her other two did. You know, you look at her debut, when we all fall asleep, where do we go? And there's a lot of like weird electropop shit going on, but like it's like creepy too, you know. I mean, I don't think all the experimentation on there works. Like I'll use like the second half of Bad Guy as an example. I don't like the beat switch on Bad Guy. It just kind of misses the point, you know. Bad Guy is this fun, upbeat, groovy song with a great bass line. And then it switches into this like penis music beat and Billie Eilish is like trying to sound like sultry over it, and it just doesn't go over well. Um, what else will I use? The weird pitched up vocals on 8. I don't really like. This video is not about her debut album though. There's great moments on there. Zanny is her best song. So and that's on there. Then you got her second album. I almost said Harder Than Ever, but that's a little baby album. We got Happier Than Ever next, which I think is a very all over the place album. I don't think it's quite as experimental as her debut, but you know, she's obviously dabbling in all these different sounds. You know, you've got her doing grungy shit with the Happier Than Ever title track. You've got her doing weird, spooky art pop on NDA. You've got another attempt at a more groovy song with Oxytocin. You've got acoustic shit. My Future, which is like almost a bit jazzy in its progression. You know, a bossa nova song. You know, it's very experimental. And that brings me back to Hit Me Hard and Soft, where it is very much Billie in her comfort zone. I mean, she is trying new sounds. You know, Lunch is obviously going into a bit of a dance punk territory with its sound. And her vocals are pretty emotive throughout it. You know, it's not just Billie Eilish doing her standard vocals. Like, I'll say vocally throughout this album, she's improved a lot. Um, you know, but like there's just so many brilliant moments throughout this album where it's just really beautiful. I mean, you've got the obvious one, Birds of a Feather, just whoa. It's like really slick, smooth, pretty pop rock. You know, y'all have heard it. Chihiro, where she's kind of doing a bit of like a lounge jazz house thing. Great. Blue's amazing. You know, there's just so much to praise. I don't think it's as revolutionary as Brett, but oh, we're shouting right now. I'm gonna pause my recording. Okay, there was like beefing going on outside my room. Yeah, like I was saying, I don't think it's as revolutionary as Brett. You know, Brett, I think, has really sort of changed the course of pop music, and it will continue to. You know, it's had this massive cultural impact. Brett Summer's everywhere. You know, it's gone to the point now where Brett Summer, a lot of people like screaming Brett Summer wouldn't be able to name like 3 songs from the album. You know, but like it's very much a phenomenon. Whereas I don't think Hit Me Hard and Soft is the same phenomenon. I think obviously Lunch and Birds of a Feather and Chihiro are big songs, but like they're not 360, you know. I mean, they probably have more streams, but you know, you're going around and you're hearing people going, "Oh my god, that's so Julia," to like every lime green thing they see, whereas you don't hear people going around, "I could eat that girl for lunch." I mean, I'm doing that, but still. Um, okay, now on to a record that disappointed me quite massively this year. Um, this record is a real shame to me, and that's Dua Lipa's Radical Optimism. I love Dua Lipa's music. Like, love, love, love it. Future Nostalgia, one of my favorite albums of 2020. You take Boys Will Be Boys off that album, and it's flawless. Like, genuinely amazing. I think it's one of the best new disco revival things, excluding Jessie Ware, that you could be listening to. I think she did it better than The Weeknd, better than all these other artists, Lady Gaga, for example. You know, and then she takes a 4 year break, drops Houdini and Training Season back to back as lead singles, which both absolute bangers, and they've got to be ready for this album. When Training Season came out, I listened to the extended version of that song for 4 hours on loop. I mean, I'm like, there's something wrong up here, but like that song, beautiful, like absolute banger. I just need someone to hold me close. Like beautiful shit. And then we get the album, and I can't remember how any other song sounds from it. I think I've gave it a 7, but it's like, is it really a 7 if I'm not listening? I mean, Houdini and Training Season are great, but the album kind of just pales in comparison, especially when you consider what Dua was saying about the album leading up to it. She hyped that album so much. Almost, you know what it reminds me of? Kirk by DaBaby. I don't think they're comparable in quality, but obviously, Baby dropped a pretty big album in 2019. Was it Baby on Baby or whatever? And kind of blew up off it. Dropped another album in the same year, hyped it up like it was going to be Illmatic 2, and it was just a retread of what he'd done on the last album, but not as likable. And I think Dua Lipa's done the same thing, but it's a bigger fall off because from Baby on Baby to Kirk, it was like a 5 to a 4, whereas with Future Nostalgia to Radical Optimism, it's like a 9 to a 5. Not to reference Dolly Parton, who is featured on Cowboy Carter by Beyonce, one of the most overhyped albums of the year. I get it. I 100% get why on paper people want to root for this album. It's Beyonce reclaiming country for the black community. Amazing. Make some good music while you're doing it. Like, 16 Carriages is a beautiful single for the album. You've got this big booming instrumental. Beyonce's vocals are absolutely soaring. But then, like, the rest of the album, it just sucks. Like, it's so boring and clean, and it's also so long and bloated. Like, people will scream about how bloated Donda is. Yeah, these are the same people praising Cowboy Carter, and it's like, they're both bloated. They both like have solid moments, sure, but they're both way too long. Speaking of way too long, Taylor Swift, Torture Poets Department. I am not one of the like weird sexist Taylor hater guys. I try not to bring her up all the time like a lot of people do. But I think when it comes to 2024 and pop music, she is definitely a very important figure. I mean, this record has been number one for like 100 million weeks now. She's going for Morgan Wallen's record, which I'm kind of rooting for her because fuck Morgan Wallen. The record sucks though. Like, I've already done a video hating on this album when I did the review, so I'm gonna try and not hate on it too much. I said in that review that I was going to be doing a review of the Anthology 2 that would be out in the next day or whatever. I've still not listened to the Anthology, and the album's like months old. If y'all want the Anthology reaction, get this video to 5 likes, and I'll do it. But yeah, it's such a step down for Taylor, Like, I know she can do better. She has done better. My she dropped Folklore and Evermore in the same year, 2 amazing records. Then she drops Midnights and it's shit. Then she drops this record and it's shit. I don't hate it because Taylor's being more revealing lyrically. I hate it because it's boring. She doesn't try vocally throughout. Her vocals are recorded in a really sloppy way to the point where they're offbeat on a lot of songs. And I get she's trying to give it a wordy feel, but it's like, There's no catchiness to be had, and the production sucks. Um, and it's not just the Jack Antonoff shit that sucks on there. Everyone else, it's so boring. But we're not going to linger on that. Let me bring up a pop album that's good. This is going to be one of the smaller pop albums I talk about today, but I do want to bring it up because while I think the person who made this isn't exactly like a main pop girly, she deserves to be, and that's Ali X's Girl with No Face. Holy guacamole. Amazing album. And straight up, like, I was talking about how uncatchy Torture Poets Department is. This album is so catchy. Every single chorus absolutely pops. Like, there's so much color throughout this album, um, which you wouldn't think from Ali X being like a goth adjacent artist, but like, her music is so bright, and you get all the synth pop revivalism stuff. I was talking about it earlier with The Weeknd and Dua Lipa, and this whole craze. Even like Justin Bieber was getting on it. A lot of this like 80s and 70s revivalism feels very stale, especially this year. I mean, you had good records coming out before, like Jessie Ware, Watch Your Pleasure, Dua Lipa, Future Nostalgia, The Weeknd, After Hours, all in the same year, and they were all good revivalism records. Well, in the case of Watch Your Pleasure, an amazing revivalism record. Fucking love Jessie Ware. But yeah, you get the impression now when you hear like Justin Bieber doing it, or like Miley Cyrus doing it, or like even Dua Lipa doing it now, where it's kind of stale. You get the impression that it's kind of soulless. There's so much soul in Girl with No Face. Like, you can tell that the record isn't really coming from a revivalism place. It's more coming from a place of love for synth pop in general. Rather than taking influences from, Madonna and like Cyndi Lauper and shit. She's more taking influence from like Gary Newman, like experimental weird synth pop. You wouldn't hear a song like Hardware Software on even like Future Nostalgia. It's such a weird record, but it's amazing, and lyrically, it's so cool too. I mean, like, go watch her appearance on Zach Sang where she explains what Galena's about. It's insane. But yeah, I love the record. It's so good. Every single song bangs. Shout out Ali X. Next up, we're going to go on to Sabrina Carpenter's new album, which I think is a very interesting record because I think it kind of sits between the issues that I've had. On one hand, you've got these absolute mammoth highs with like Hit Me Hard and Soft, Girl with No Face, Brat. Hit Me Hard and Soft I gave an 89, and the other two I gave 9s to. It's very, very strong records. And then I was talking about like the mid records. I don't think this album's mid. I think Sabrina actually has a lot of potential, which is crazy because she's like 6 albums in or whatever. I think the lead singles in the lead up to this thing, Espresso, Please, 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 were really good. And I would actually really strongly recommend them. There's some decent songs throughout the album, like Juno and Taste. And I'd recommend those songs too. I mean, it's cool that Sabrina's having her moment. And I would genuinely like recommend those songs. Well, you've already heard them. My issue is it's not really fleshed out as an album. I respect her attempts to be more lyrical as an artist, but they come off more as like lore dumping than albums. Like the weird love triangle shit was like a sell to the album. I mean, I'm not super enveloped. Is that the word? In like stan culture, I don't really care about that kind of thing. I'm very much a music reviewer. I'm not a drama YouTuber. Like, I could care less about who's fucking who. Like, I could care less. But like, yeah. What am I leaving out? I imagine there's a few pop records I've not touched on, you know, like Gracie Abrams or Conan Gray. I've not listened to those records, so I don't really feel comfortable speaking on them. I mean, obviously, there's been male pop stuff too. The new Post Malone record, which I've still not listened to. The new Imagine Dragons record, which I'd hesitate to call pop. It's more like Coldplay rip-off ballads, surprisingly decent R&B, and then your standard, like, horrible, overcompressed radio rock. Go watch that reaction. Go watch my reaction to Sabrina Carpenter too. I've done actually quite a few videos on the albums in this video. I did a Brat review as well. You can go watch that and go watch me misinterpret what talk means. But yeah, I think I'm not sure if I want to wrap it up because I don't know if I'm missing any. I mean, we've got a new Weekend record upcoming, which I think should be interesting because while I've not been a massive fan of the Weekend's recent output, you know, I think After Hours is pretty good. I think Dawn FM's okay. I think he's been on this kind of weird run since Beauty Behind the Madness, where it's just kind of like everything's a bit nah. I mean, I didn't like the Idol soundtrack. I thought it was pretty boring. So we'll see with this new record. I'm pretty sure we've got a lead single out tonight, which I might do a reaction to tomorrow, make it 3 videos in 1 week. Or actually, I might just put this video out tomorrow and say this is my Friday video. I could do that, actually. I'm gonna do that. Haha, fuck you. But yeah, thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Leave a like if you liked. Comment down below your thoughts on pop music in 2024. And if you want me to continue these sort of like rant style videos, I can maybe do like a rap music in 2024 or like a rock music in 2024 video if you're interested. And I will catch you in the next one. Please do consider subscribing to the channel. I forgot to mention that. I need to plug all this shit, sorry. Please do consider subscribing to the channel if you're interested in more music reviews, music reactions, general discussion videos. Also follow me on Album of the Year for reviews. I've reviewed every single record I talked about in this video. And there will be more pop music in 2024, and I'm going to review those records too. But yeah, thank you again for watching, and goodbye!